Hi, my name is Leandro Facchinetti, and let's write some code together, shall we? What we have on the menu today is part 6 of this series of videos in which I am building a REAPER action to explode video files that have multiple audio tracks, or any kind of media that has multiple tracks, really. If you have a media file with just audio tracks or just multiple video tracks, it's unusual. But if you have something like that, then you drop that into REAPER to edit, and you will not be able to access any other track besides the first video track and the first audio track. So what we are doing is we are developing a script that will explode that media file into multiple files containing a single stream each file. And we have been doing that for several streams. That's why this is part 6. So what we have so far is the action. It's a working prototype, really. And I can show you how it works. So there is this file over here. It has a video track and it has 2 audio tracks. One is the audio from the microphone and the other is the audio from the computer itself. And I am able to call the action that we are developing. It's called explode multi-stream multi-track media file into new one stream one track media files.lua. That's the name of the action. And then when we run this, so pay attention to the directory in which this project is. So I'm going to delete everything that does not have to do with this media item. So we have our project and we have the media item that we are going to act on. So we can select the media item, we can run our action, and then it fails. So it was supposed to work because it was working last time. So let's figure out why this is failing now. So attempt to concatenate a new value, global file. Let's open our action and I'm going to run this again so I get the line where this occurred. Okay, it did not work. Let's see. Okay, so I ran it and it worked now. So I have no idea why that mistake, that error happened before. As I said, it is a working prototype, or sometimes working prototype. It's not perfect yet, but it is capable of creating the tracks to hold the items, and create the items with the different tracks, so with the different streams. So we have here one media item, which is the video, the one that we are seeing right here. I can mute it and then you should not see this anymore. Oh, I still have that one enabled. So I guess this is something that the script needs to do. It needs to mute the original item. I'm going to add this to do, or in fact, I think it's so quick that we can do this just right now. So when we are looping over the media to convert, I think this is an appropriate place to do this because we are getting the information of whether it's muted or not. So we might as well just set the mute information as well. So we are setting the mute information here on the children, but we can copy this over and then set mute to true on the parent. So now let's see how this is performing. So I'm going to delete this and rerun the action. Bad argument number 3 to set, oh, it expected a number, not a true. So I suppose that true is the number 1. Let's try this again. And so yeah, it muted the original track. I'm going to rerun this because it gets confusing. So, oh, I deleted one track too many. Okay, I'm going to try this again. This is what it was supposed to do. So I deleted all the files that are not the original file with the multiple streams in it. I'm coming here to Reaper, getting my action, selecting the item and running the action, and this is what it's supposed to do. It mutes the original item, the multi-stream or multi-track media file. It creates some new items, and this is the video item. So when I show you the video preview, I can mute this and then you won't see the video. And then the two audio tracks, one with my microphone and one with the sound from my computer. So this is what the action does. Now, in this session, our goal is to distribute this working prototype. It's still a working prototype, so it's not like we are going to advertise this anywhere besides this stream, because we still have many issues to solve, as you saw when I tried to demonstrate this. But I think this is a good time to tackle the problem of how we are going to distribute this. And we are going to start with, so that's the plan for today. The game plan is we are going to install Repack and install SWS and do a basic setup that I would do in Reaper. And I'm doing this just because I think it's interesting to show how I do this. I do it in some ways that are typical, some ways that are unique, and this machine is new, I have not set it up, so I thought I would do it on the stream. So that's part one. We are going to install Repack and set everything up. I would do this for developing rescripts, but I would also do this just for general use of Reaper. Then we are going to add this new script to Repack, and we are going to do it in a way that makes it clear that we are still working with a prototype. So that's part two of what we want to do. Part three of what we want to do is to think about how we are going to distribute Ffmpeg. And that's really the hard part here, because Ffmpeg is a dependency. We are actually using Ffmpeg to do the inspection and the conversion of the file. So we are inspecting to know the number of streams in the file, and we are converting the file, all using Ffmpeg. So we need to distribute Ffmpeg somehow. We could just depend on an installation of Ffmpeg on the user's machine, but I think it's best if we distribute Ffmpeg ourselves with the rescript. So we'll look into that. Okay, but let's start with setting up Reaper for development, but also for general use. So typically the first thing I do is to install Repack, which is the package manager. It is a package manager for Reaper. I think it's the only one. So I download the file. I'm going to delete these files here. They are the files that are generated by Ffmpeg and that are included in the project. So they are the files that would show up underneath the original file over here. And every time I run the action, it recreates those files. So that's why I'm deleting them over and over. So I come here to Reaper and go to Options and Show Reaper Resource Path. And at this point, I typically close Reaper. And I have just downloaded Repack from the Repack website. I am running on a machine that is macOS 64-bit, but it's not ARM. It's not one of the new Macs with the M1 processor. That is my streaming computer, not the development computer I'm using. So here in the Reaper configuration folder, there is the users plugin directory, to which I drag this. And then I restart Reaper, and probably it will complain about running this. Yes, it complained about running this because this has not been signed by the developer. So I come here to Security and Privacy, under System Preferences, and under In General. And then over here, it usually, if I say cancel, it shows up here and I can allow anyway. So now I have to close and reopen REAPER. So there is this song and dance that you have to go through every time you want to run a native extension or something that has not been signed. So one of the user plugins or any kind of OBS extension, you also run into this problem. So now I can open this and now it's working. And at this point, I always like to select this option of install new packages when synchronizing, which means that I will install every package in every repository that I list. And now I'm going to import some new repositories besides the default ones that come with Repack. So just a quick summary. If you don't know how Repack works or what it is, Repack is this way to distribute scripts and effects. It's just a way to distribute extensions to REAPER. And it is distributed. Yeah, it's a distributed distribution system. So it's distributed in the sense that the publisher, like we are publishers of scripts and extensions. They can host these files anywhere. Scripts and extensions are just text files, and they can put these files anywhere. We are putting them on GitHub. And then you just have to list where all the files are, and in this XML file, and then Repack will go to the right places and download everything. There are videos in this channel in which I go in detail over how to create one of these repositories here. But a repository is just one source of scripts and effects. It's just one source of extensions. Repack comes with a list of repositories, and you can come here to the Repack website and see a list of repositories, which is super nice because there are many awesome repositories that are not included by default, including mine. So you can install all my extensions, including the one that we are about to publish. But that's not all. Since this is my machine, I also like to install these, and these are just my preferred extensions, including SWS, which is this package with thousands of different actions and extensions to work with things like cycle actions and doing things like normalization of audio, not really normalization, but loudness control of audio. So it's this super advanced thing with many extensions, and if you are using REAPER, you definitely want to install SWS. And typically people would install Repack and would install SWS separately, but since we have a package manager, I thought, well, why don't we distribute SWS using Repack? And it seems like no one did that before, so I created a repository to do just that, and I don't know if anyone else is using this, but I am. So I'm going to add this as a repository here as well. And now when I click OK, this is going to take a while. So I'm going to explain everything that's happening while it's happening. So now it is synchronizing the repositories. So it's fetching the XML files, including, for example, this one. So it's going here and it's fetching this XML file. And in this XML file, it lists all the packages. In this case, it is the SWS package, this one, and then there is another one that I like by TB Pro Audio, so I have repackaged it using Repack. So there are all these packages, and in the packages there are different versions. Repack by default will always grab the latest, and then the sources, which are literally the files that make up the effect or the rescript or the extension or whatever the case may be. So that's what Repack is doing right now. And by default, the default repositories have thousands of actions. 3,000 actions. So, well, actually 3,000 files. Some of the actions and some of the effects require multiple files. And that's going to be the case of our action as well. It will require one Lua file, and it will also require Ffmpeg. Hopefully, if we can distribute it. So while this is downloading, why don't we open the project or my repository over here, And let's look at the state of things. We just made a change. So let's see the change over here. We are muting the original item. And I'm going to commit this. My commit messages are just a space because I am using Git as just a way to save and distribute files. I don't really use the commit messages. It's just me working on these scripts most of the time anyway. So now I can push this. And over here under scripts, explode multi-stream, multi-track, media file, blah, blah, blah. It is right here, the script that we just wrote, including the new line that we just wrote. And we can access this file from anywhere on the web. We can just access this file as text. So here it is being presented to us as this web page on GitHub, and it has this syntax highlighting going on. But you can click here on raw, and then you can literally just get a hold of the Lua file. And that's what we need to ship using Repack. But I don't want to ship directly from the master branch, because if I change the script, then this will change, but it will not necessarily map to a new version in Repack. Remember when we were looking at the XML file, there were all these different versions, and Repack needs to know that there is a new version so that it can download the updated version. So I don't want to do this directly from master. There is a trick on GitHub where you can press the letter Y on the keyboard and it changes the URL. So it's no longer pointing at master, but it's pointing at the current commit that was master at this point in time. And then I can click here on raw. And now I get a hold of this that is not at master, but at this specific commit. So this file will never change. We have a static URL that will never change, that points to the file that we want to distribute. So we can use GitHub as a hosting service for our repository when working with the code base, but we can also use it for distribution. And that's what we are going to do. So now we have this file over here. Let's change the XML file. And this is the XML file with all my scripts and effects, all my extensions to Reaper. So let's categorize this. Is this an utility? I would say that this is an utility. So just copy and paste this section. And let's change the name. It is a script, so I don't need to change the type. And the version will be 0.0.1. Because this is really an early version of this. It's not ready for consumption. So let's look at... Okay, I wanted to make sure that this main was necessary, and it seems like it is, because there are other files, there are other rescripts here that I have, and I always list main along with the source. But if there are things that are not scripts, for instance, this one, it's type data, then I don't need to list main. There you go. So main, and then the URL we just copied. So we can come here and copy and paste it here. And this will be enough for us to distribute the Lua file. But I don't want to necessarily commit and push this yet. So let's see what happened meanwhile in Reaper. It was installing thousands of packages, some of which are native extensions, including SWS. So now Reaper needs to be restarted. You can see here under the extensions there is only Repack, but when we reload Reaper, we quit and reopen, there will be a lot of extensions there that are installed with SWS. So It seems like some of the languages are also installed with Repack, so I always want to load Reaper in English. And then under here under extensions, you can see a list of extensions that were installed with SWS. And we can check that I have some of my extensions here by looking for my name. So you can see all the other actions I have created with multicam editing, OBS stuff, and so on. Now let's look at the explode action that we were writing. Yeah, so this one. As it stands, this action is not installed via Repack. It was installed by us in a previous stream by loading the action manually. So I said that I did not want to necessarily commit and push this yet, and that's because I have some ideas. First is, I think we should warn the users that happen to install this while we are still developing it, that it's not really ready for consumption. So what we are going to do is say Reaper MB. MB stands for message box. And then we are going to say this is a work in progress. And then I am going to link to my GitHub, but to my YouTube channel in which I'm doing these streams. So this becomes very meta. But this is just so people know what's going on. Or at least they have one clue of where to start looking for what's going on. So this is a work in progress, C blah, and then a title, warning. Things may work. Warning. I'm being too zealous about this message, but anyway, warning. This is a work in progress. It may or may not work yet. See blah. And now this message box here in this message box function here in Reaper accepts a third parameter, which is a number. And if I hit F1, I'm going to see the full list of numbers that it accepts. I can see some of them over here, but if I hit F1, then I go to the Reaper API help, and then I can see that the number 4 is the one I want. 4 for yes or no. Do you want to continue? And now this is going to return to us a number, an integer. And I'll call this integer work in progress. Or really, I will call this continue. So if continue is equal to 1, then I suppose that this number will be either 0 or 1. And I suppose that if the person says no, then it will be 0. And if the person says yes, it will be 1. So I'll say if continue equals to 0, then return, which is a way to stop the execution of the script. So now let's see if this works. I'll save, and then it will say, warning, this is a work in progress. It may or may not work yet. C blah. Do you want to continue? No. And then I can check that nothing happened over here. So I'll run this again. Do you want to continue? No. And then it continued. So now let's do something else. We'll Reaper show console message to string of continue, and then save this. Do you want to continue? No. It's the number 7, of course. close, and if I say yes, it's the number 6. Okay, so no is the number 7. Okay, the number 7. Awesome. So now we can remove this show console message, and then we save, and then we say no, whatever. So I'm going to delete all the subtracks over here. The number 7, come on. So I'm going to unmute this, and I'm going to save and say no, so it did not run. Also, another thing I want to do is to delete all the temporary files over here to make sure that the action really is not running. So I select the thing, I go to here and I run it. I say no, no files are created, no tracks are created. Awesome. So if I say yes, then it creates tracks, it creates the items. So it seems like this is good. It's a fair warning, and we will remove this later. But let's come back here to Visual Studio Code and commit this part. And now we really have the file that we care about, the file that we want to distribute. So let's grab the URL we copy and pasted before. I don't really like it because it's this raw thing right away. So coming back here to where we were, we come back to master, and I will push the commit that I have just created. And I will refresh, and I will do the letter Y on the keyboard trick. And instead of following this link will redirect me somewhere. So instead of following it, I will copy the link address to here. This is a very manual and roundabout way of creating a Repack configuration. There are more automated ways of doing this, but I prefer to do it by hand. So that's how I roll. And let me look at the Git graph to make sure that this hash is correct. So it starts with 736, and this does not start with 736. So it seems like something went wrong. I just needed to refresh everything. I'll copy the link address now, and now it will point at 736 something. And I can click on this link and follow it, and I will see the redirection to this place. And this is the latest addition to our script, so it seems like it is all functional. So with that, we can save, commit the XML file, and push the changes to the XML file. So at this point, we are able to update the Repack that we have just installed. So we can update the Repack repository, and we will get this action from Repack. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to delete everything and mute. I should probably be using Command Z to undo this. Also to test that Command Z is doing the right thing. So now we can synchronize packages, and maybe it will update, maybe it will not. In this case it did. So it updated and it installed the package because I configured Repack to install all the packages every time in the beginning of this stream. So it updated this time. Sometimes it does not update automatically because this file that we are pointing at, not this one, but the XML file that we are pointing at, this one, it is cached by GitHub. So sometimes you have to wait like 5 minutes for the thing to update. Okay, so at this point we are distributing this using Repack. So when I go to my list of actions and I look for Repack explode, then now I see my action twice. One of these is the one we loaded while developing, and one of these was installed using Repack. Awesome. So we are able to distribute the script itself. We did 2 of the 3 things I promised we would. I installed and configured Repack for development, but also for just using Repack, and I configured all my packages, including SWS. That is not exactly mine. I'm just redistributing it, but anyway. And we did the second thing, which is to distribute the script. Now the third thing is to think about how we are going to distribute Ffmpeg. Because right now, if you look at the source of my script, it is not only using Ffmpeg installed in my machine anywhere, but it's using exactly the path on my machine, which will probably not be the same path as your machine. So now we have to think about how we want to distribute Ffmpeg. Well, as I said, I would like to distribute this as a regular file. So that's something you can do. You can distribute regular files. I have an example here where I have this action that connects REAPER with OBS, and then you can record video in REAPER, and the way it works is it calls the command line, and then there is this command line utility I created called OBS CLI, and OBS CLI calls OBS and does whatever it needs to do. It starts recording, it stops recording, and so forth. So the architecture that we have for this script we are creating is similar. We are calling something on the command line, which is, in this case, Ffmpeg, not another program that I wrote, but the spirit is the same, and I would like to distribute the file in much the same way. So I'm going to copy this part over to here, and we will start a new version. So we are on version 001, we'll start version 002. The source of this script will be exactly the same, but we'll copy over these 3 lines. And in case you're like, where the hell are you? You're just copying and pasting stuff, but where the hell did you find these things in the first place? Well, there is the Repack documentation, and there is another video in this channel in which I kind of go over this, but you can come here to the Repack repository. And there are 2 repositories that are worth going to. The Repack repository has a wiki, and then the Repack index repository also has a wiki that is worth looking at. So you can come here on the wiki to the index format, and then there is a detailed list of everything you can include and everything that you can distribute, including a data section. Yeah, not a data section, but a data type. There are different types of things you can distribute: effects, rescripts, and data. Usually these are things like grooves. So there are ways for you to distribute grooves for SWS, and I distribute some things like my OBS CLI executable. You can distribute any kind of file. And then in this other wiki for Repack index, there are examples. So as I said before, that there are these tools to help you create that XML, and Repack index one is the tool I was talking about. And yeah, I don't think there is anything of interest in this wiki really. It's just this one. This is the documentation for everything you can include in the XML, and it even has an example. And probably the way I started my file was with this example, and then today I just copy and paste and modify stuff. So now we have a way to distribute Ffmpeg as data, but what are we distributing really? Where is Ffmpeg? Well, I don't know exactly. We will need to find a static build of Ffmpeg somewhere. So let's go to Ffmpeg, and this part I did not research before streaming, so we'll see. It has a download link over here, and there is the source code or executable files. It seems like that's where we would like to go. So static builds for macOS. Perfect. We'll start there, and then we will do the same for Linux. Static builds for Linux. That is awesome. and then Windows builds from 2 different people. We'll go to both places and try our luck. What is a static build, you may be wondering? So Ffmpeg is a library that has many dependencies. As you can see, you can enable or disable all these dependencies to enable or disable some of the features from Ffmpeg, like formats that it can handle, or the kinds of filters that you can use when processing video and audio. Like, you can see some of these are like for formats. This Vorbis is a format for storing audio and video as well, I think. And this is definitely an encoder for video. So these are different features you can enable and disable. So traditionally, Ffmpeg would just rely on these dependencies being installed on your machine. So in effect, it's similar to a problem that we are running into right now. I want to distribute my Repack with my rescript, but it depends on Ffmpeg, and I cannot really rely on the fact that you have installed Ffmpeg on your machine and that all my users will have installed Ffmpeg on their machines. So what I'm doing is I'm distributing Ffmpeg along with my action. And a static build or a static binary is a similar situation. There are all these dependencies or libraries that Ffmpeg itself depends on, and a static build is just bundling everything together and shipping with one binary. So it will be a big file, but in that file there will be one executable that we can just run, and it will produce the results. It will have embedded all the libraries. So the traditional way of just depending on the libraries being installed on your machine is feasible if you have something like a package manager, which is how I install Ffmpeg on my machine. I installed it using Brew, a package manager for macOS and Windows and Linux. So I said, Brew install Ffmpeg. And when I did that, it installed not only Ffmpeg, but all the libraries as well. That is something called a dynamic build, or a dynamic link, or a dynamic binary, whatever. But a static one will embed everything, and that's the one we want to ship, because I don't want to install all these dependencies as data using Repack. That would not make sense. So we will have one binary and we can ship that. So all users are encouraged to use the current snapshot build instead of the release build. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to download Ffmpeg for macOS. I think this is the macOS. Yes, it is the first tab I opened. So this is the macOS version. And let's open this file. And then we have Brilliant. It's a big file. It's 76 megabytes, but it is one file that is Ffmpeg for macOS. So I guess I should rename this to Ffmpeg Mac OS. And then I'll go to the command line real quick, go to my downloads folder and run Ffmpeg Mac OS. Oh, come on. I will need to enable this on system preferences. The same dance we went over 30 minutes ago. So yeah, this is Ffmpeg, a static build. I can run this without having installed any of the other dependencies, though I have them installed, but it's not using those dependencies as installed on my machine. So that's one of the things I will want to distribute. The next, let's look at this. Ffmpeg static builds for Linux. And welcome. Here you will find notes highly recommended to use Git master builds. Okay, so same story. I should use the latest version, not the release. So that's what I'm gonna do. And here there are different builds for this. So on this macOS version, there was only one version, which I think is probably Intel 64, not ARM. All binaries are compiled for blah. blah, blah, blah. I do not plan to provide Ffmpeg binaries for Apple Silicon. I don't have ARM hardware. Not planning on... Okay. Okay, seems like someone else will have to pick up the slack. And worst comes to worst, we will compile Ffmpeg ourselves. But... So this is Mac OS. Now let's go to Linux. And there are all these different versions for ARM64, Intel 64, ARM7. Yeah, we want some of those, but not all of them. So my strategy here is something I mentioned on my previous stream. My strategy will be to just support the versions that are supported by REAPER itself and Repack. So I'll look at the intersection of what is supported by both. Let's do that right now and look at the intersection. So REAPER supports macOS 64, Intel, and ARM beta, but anyway, it supports that. Oh, and also macOS 32-bit. And so does Repack. Now let's look at Windows. There is 64 and 32, same here. And Linux, it is 64, 32, ARM 64, and ARM7. 64, 32, ARM 64, and ARM7. It's ARM 32-bit is ARM7, or ARM version 7, or whatever. So both Repack and REAPER support all these same versions. So I'm going to use this as my reference. And let's look at this page alongside with it. So here we are looking at the Linux static binaries, and we should get AMD 64, which matches this. I'm gonna go ahead and download that. We also want Linux 32, so that is this one. And I say 32 bits, and we are looking at 686. It's just the way that these architectures are named. 32 bits maps to an 86 processor. There is a long history behind this. Now Arch, it's AMD 64. It's ARM, not AMD, ARM 64 maps to this one. And then ARM7 maps to this, I believe. I remember reading the Wikipedia article for ARM processors, and I think that this is the one that maps to ARM7. There is something like high floating point arithmetic or whatever. That was the feature that was introduced in ARM7, and then it became this name. Computer architectures are very poorly named, but I think those are the ones we care about. Oh, I should also cross this against something else, which is the format for Repack distribution. Because there are only so many architectures we can specify here. So let's look at ARM. So yeah, here we have the platforms that we can distribute to. And I would expect that this matches this, which in turn matches this. So I would expect that to be the case, but let's see. So we have Darwin, which is macOS. So we have Darwin, and then 32 and 64 in ARM. So we are missing Darwin ARM. We'll need to keep track of what's going on here. So we are missing, I'll put a comment here to do, we are missing Ffmpeg for Apple M1 or ARM or Silicon. Then Linux 32, 64, ARM and ARM64, and then Windows 32 and 64, because there is no Windows ARM. Okay, so we got all the Linux ones we wanted. We are still thinking about what we're going to do with Apple ARM. Now let's go to Windows. This page hosts packages containing binaries for Ffmpeg and blah blah blah. Oh, by the way, on the first or second stream of this series, I mentioned how we could use FFFprobe to get the inspection of the media files in a different format. We could get that information in JSON, as opposed to what we are doing in Ffmpeg, which is just unstructured format. And we decided to go with Ffmpeg because the unstructured format was as good as the structured format for our purposes, because in Lua there is no native way of parsing the JSON. But also I said that FFFprobe would be another thing to distribute, which is exactly what we are running into right now. We are having to distribute all these binaries, and FFFprobe would be another one to distribute. So let's see. These are the features included. Download one of the Git builds, which is the latest. And here we are doing Windows. So we only want 32 and 64. So let's see. This is the Git version, links, full and essentials. I guess I'll go with full. And then we will have to test this on Windows, which will be the topic of one of the next streams. Maybe the next, depending on how far we can go with this whole shenanigans we are doing. And then there is also this other page with Ffmpeg builds for Windows. So let's see what we have here. We have only Windows 64. We don't have 32. And maybe this is true of this one as well, because I don't seem to find anything for 32 bits. Let's look for 32 on this page. Let's look for 86 on this page. Yeah, it seems like we will be missing some. So we are missing ARM, and we are missing in Windows 32 bits. I don't think it's a big deal if we end up not shipping this, because Apple M1 is capable of running x64 using Rosetta 2. All the new Macs with M1 processor are able to emulate Intel processors. So it's not a big deal. And Windows 32 bits, I think, is very old. And yes, it is still available over here, and some people may use it because they have 32-bit computers, but most probably because they have plugins which are 32 bits, and then the plugin needs a 32-bit host. But I think that is very unusual, so I don't think it matters too much. In any case, we can compile from source and get a static build, but it's much more convenient to just redistribute the existing ones. So we have a bunch of files here to extract. This one is the Windows version, so let's see what we have here. Maybe we have a 32-bit in there. Nope, only one executable. So I believe if I just have it, I don't think I need the docs folder. Yes, I don't think I need the presets, probably. So I believe we can just get away with this file. I think it would be nice for me to mention in the XML file where I'm getting all these things from. So the macOS binary is coming from here, and I'll leave these as comments. The Windows one is coming from here, and it seems like I already closed the page with the Linux one. But never mind that. I can come back here to Linux, and this was the website I used. So this is the macOS version, this is the Windows version. No, this is the Windows version, and this is the Linux version. And I will leave this comment out of the version. I'll probably leave it over here just as a reference for the future. And my wife is being kind and joining the stream and asking what kind of computer do you have? Well, I have the streaming computer, which is a macOS with M1 processor. So if we need to compile Ffmpeg, we can use that. I have the development computer I'm using right now is an Intel 64 Mac. Then I have another one which is a PC, and that's also Intel 64. And in both development machines, not the streaming one, but in both development machines, I have dual boot. So I have Linux that we can work with, Ubuntu more specifically, and I have Windows both running in Mac hardware and Windows running in a PC computer as well. So I have pretty much everything most people would have for using Reaper, which I specifically bought all these machines so that I could work on my rescripts and I could test in all the different computers without having to use emulation. I used to use VirtualBox, which was okay, but it was slow, and in some cases, like for working with video, it didn't work at all. Okay, so I'll leave this to do on the top. We'll get back to it at some point. And now let's extract all these different versions. I'll go to the command line and extract this from the command line. tar extract file ffmpeg git, and we'll start with AMD. Okay, so this is over. I am going to move the ffmpeg, or actually I'll do this part here in Finder. So this is ffmpeg. And at this point, I think I will use the language that is used by Repack. So let's return to the documentation for the XML files. I reopened a bunch of things. File structure, no. Index format. So I will call this not macOS, I'll call it Darwin64. Then Windows, I'll call this Win64. Or actually, because I don't have other versions of Darwin and I don't have other versions of Windows. In both cases, I could only get Intel 64. So I'm just going to say Darwin. And I'm just going to say Windows, though it's kind of obvious because it's a .exe at the end, but now we use 2 dashes to separate. Now we have Linux 64. And now rinse and repeat, right? So I just get the command that I ran before and do all the other ones. You know, a quick way of doing this, I can just list the files, get this part of the command, come here and start a buffer and just build out the command that I need. So I will need, oh, in fact, I can list with only one name per column. Get a hold of all these. That's a weird way of building a command. Get out of the way. Okay, there you go. So now this is extracting all the files and creating folders here. And we are done. Close that. And we are done. So this is Ffmpeg. This is Linux 32. This is ARM 7. ARM 7? Yes, ARM 7. And this is why I used 2 dashes. Oh, and it's Linux 64 like this, so it's Linux 32 like that. ARM 64 is this one. Whew, that was a lot of work. But now we have all the executables we need to distribute. Or not all of them, most of them. How are we going to distribute this? Originally, I did the OBS one. It is also a bunch of executables for different platforms that I need to distribute. I just put them in the REAPER, in my REAPER directory here under data. But it's not there. So maybe I'm wrong. Where did I put the executables? So let's look at what I did in the past. OBS, CLI, okay. Oh, so I'm doing the smart thing, and I was going to say, oh, I did the dumb thing, and I'm going to do the smart thing, but I was already doing the smart thing, which is to use a GitHub release for this. So I'm going to do here under my repository, I guess I need to open this in a different browser in which I'm logged into GitHub. So I can come here to the REAPER repository, and I am going to create a release. How do I do that? Do I even have releases enabled here? Release. It seems like I would have. I don't know how to create a GitHub release. Create GitHub release. I was expecting to see something here on the right column. And I know a way to create a release, which is to push a tag, but I would like to create a release from the GUI here from the website. Tags, create a new release. There you go. So I'll call this release as Ffmpeg. And now I'm going to attach some binaries. So this is another way of distributing files using GitHub as the distribution mechanism, or really the repository where I'm saving things. I could just put everything in the, and that's what I thought I was doing before. I could just put the files here under the data folder and then push the files, and that would work. But it's kind of annoying to have a Git repository with so many big files. These files are not huge, but they're somewhat big. So having a GitHub release is a separate place where I can put this. So I guess I need to put a description. I remember having to do that in the past, so just put a space here. Then I'll select all the files that I want to distribute, and I will upload them. So now I'm uploading the binaries for Ffmpeg. I'm going to get from GitHub some URLs that I can then paste here, and I'll have the files shipped with my action. So now let's see the list of platforms that we are supporting and the files that we are gonna ship. So how am I going to do this? Well, first of all, I definitely need to change this name. So I'm going to call this a ReaPack Ffmpeg. Now for platforms, since I named everything in a smart way, I suppose I can come here to the terminal, go to the downloads folder, list all these files, paste it over here. Now everything up to this I will want to copy like that. Oh, hang on, there is a mistake. I got ffprobe for Windows. Oh no! Let's go to the trash can and recover. Oh boy, I have a bunch of files from having tested so much. But now we should find full build Ffmpeg. Okay, that's the one I want. Ugh, yikes. The Windows one is wrong, so let me delete that. And now upload the right one. So now let's get a hold of the platform. I guess the easiest way for me to do this is to do it like this. I feel like this stream is more like kind of busy work. But it's necessary work. And it can be kind of fun. So now we have source, type data, file, ffmpeg, blah, and different platforms. So on the Windows platform, I'll call this ffmpeg exe, and I'm putting my name as a prefix in case someone else is distributing another repack that has a binary that has ffmpeg. I don't clash with them. So you guys, I can remove this and reformat. Now here on GitHub, I can publish the release, and I guess I will save what this is for. There you go. Now I have a proper description. And yeah, publish release. We weren't able to create the release for you. Make sure you have a valid tag. Okay, whatever. I need a tag to create a release. I will create a tag. So git tag ffmpeg git push tags. I have a draft. Let's jump into the edit part and recent commits. What the hell? Oh, it seems like I just needed to do this. Existing tag. I think it would have created the tag for me. In any case, now I can publish this. Okay, that's a hacky way of just getting some files in the system. Now I can right click and copy stuff. And for Darwin, that's the one we have. I'm going to turn off line wrapping, and I'm going to select all the places where I need to paste stuff. And I'm going to paste the same URL, but I'm going to come here and grab. Oh no, there are dashes over here. Okay, whatever. I'll just do this. And I'll change Darwin for the thing I copied, and I will put a dot exe at the end. Okay, that seems to be working. Now let's double check that we can say that we can download this. And I will test all of them because sometimes I make small mistakes and you know how these things go. Alrighty, so now we are shipping the binary along with the script. I'm going to push this and that will be it for today, but on the next episode we will have to use the binary that we are shipping. Anyway, so I'm going to ship this just by committing and pushing. Come back here to REAPER, option, extensions, Repack, synchronize. Yeah, it's taking a while, so it's downloading the Ffmpeg distribution. So now I have version 2, and I can come to the REAPER settings folder. Under data, there is our Ffmpeg ready for us to use. Well, almost ready for us to use. And of course, this is smart enough to be the Ffmpeg version that is for Macs. So we can test this by going to the terminal, cd, drag that folder here, and then we can look at what is this file. It is a Mac OS 64-bit executable. So we are getting the right version. Awesome. So this file is ready for us to use. Well, almost, and I say almost because look at the permissions on this file. It's not executable. There are no X's over here. So if I try to run this, it doesn't run. It says permission denied. So we will have to deal with this in our script. It's kind of a hack. It's what I did in the OBS action. And we will have to do this here in this one as well. We will have to set this as an executable before we are able to run it. But I'm going to leave that for next time because I think we did enough. I can delete all these files right now, right? Yeah, I have already uploaded them, so whatever. And yeah, I think that's it for now. So in this episode, oh, I cannot switch cameras. Come on, streaming computer. The streaming computer is trying to update. Now I can switch cameras. Awesome. So what we did in this episode is a bunch of busy work. And we also fixed a mistake. It was not muting the original item, so we mute the original item before putting all the new items that are exploded items. And we distributed the script. We installed Repack and we set up everything. And we distributed a binary as data, which is kind of a hack for Ffmpeg. And we collected all those binaries as well. I did not do that beforehand, so I was collecting all the binaries. That's what we did now, and next time we are going to change the script so it does not use the hard-coded path that works only on my machine. Here we will change this so it uses the binary that we just shipped, and we will probably like do something like testing on Windows or something. And in the meantime, I may compile Ffmpeg on the M1 computer I have. I may not do that. I don't know. We'll see. In fact, I think what I'm gonna do is I will ship with this ARM, with this Intel 64 version, and I will try it on my M1 computer, which is running Reaper in the M1 version of it, because you can run the Intel version using the compatibility layer, but I'm not. I'm running the M1 version, so I can try that, and if it works, then it's good enough. In any case, that's going to be the next one. Thanks for watching this stream. Thanks for your support by subscribing to the channel. Thanks for supporting me on Patreon and PayPal. Thanks for showing up and commenting. It's always fun to work with you all in the stream. I hope you had some fun. I see you on the next one. Bye.